Hi guys, welcome back to Nyx Reads. How do you like my newly organized bookshelf? There's quite a few books missing right now because I pulled so many out. I'm gonna have a lot of fun putting all of these back. If you're into bookshelf reorganization videos, I'm gonna link the one that I just uploaded somewhere up here where I attempted to make all of this look beautiful again. I'm actually quite excited for this video because the year is coming to an end and it's time to evaluate how I did in all of my reading challenges for this year, and also what are my reading challenges for 2023. Starting with my 2022 Classics Challenge, I'm gonna link the video up here. I put together 10 books, classics, that I wanted to read this year. Let's see how I did. So out of the 10, I have read 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, The Physicists by Friedrich Dürrenmatt. I finally read and really enjoyed Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen in this beautiful Penguin English Library edition. I read Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne, and I read Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I am reading Dracula by Bram Stoker at the moment. Well, I started it in September and I was just not feeling it. I don't know. I thought this would be the perfect fall book, but then there were just so many other books to read. So I'm probably gonna finish it hopefully the start of 2023. The books on this list that I have not touched yet are To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov, and I'm not surprised. Are you surprised that I didn't even start this? Anna Karenina by Tolstoy. I mean, I know. I was hopeful, but also not surprised that I didn't get to read this book. So I read 5 1/4-ish out of this 10 book list, which honestly, seeing as I usually never would have picked up any of these classics had it not been for this challenge, this is a win for me. And mind you, there's other classics that I have read this year, which is not part of this TBR. So overall, could I have done better? Significantly. But I'm still happy with the outcome. Also, the 4 3/4 books that I have not gotten to yet, I'm just gonna transfer to next year's challenge. Moving on to my seasonal reading challenges / TBRs. What I did this year was, instead of having a list of books that I wanted to get to each month, I did it by the season. And with every season, the TBR got smaller and smaller because I noticed how hard it is to achieve this goal. Starting with spring, I was still very optimistic at that point. I put together 10 books to read in a 3-month period. This is the only seasonal TBR that I actually completely finished. Mind you, the last book from this challenge I finished in October. Part of this challenge were The Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina, My Life in France by Julia Child, Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, This Shining Life by Harriet Klein, My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones, We Dawn by Brandon Sanderson and Jancy Patterson, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue from V. Schwab, and I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. For my summer TBR, I already reduced it by 2 books, so it's only 8 that I had on there because I was noticing I still have some from my spring TBR left. What I have finished are Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, which I have a separate review up for that book. Really enjoyed it. You Love Me by Carolyn Kepnes, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and the last 2 books on that list I'm reading right now, which are Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, and the other one is Dune by Frank Herbert. I am pretty much exactly at 50%, and I want to say that out of this 50%, 80% of this I read in 2 sittings when I was on the plane to and from Vancouver because I had no onboard entertainment system. So that's why I was able to get through it pretty fast. And I'm honestly suspecting that I'm gonna keep the other 50% for my next flight to Europe and back. What I like so far is that a lot of questions that I had from watching the first movie were answered. So it just gave me so much more context and information. Very, very political. For my autumn TBR, I only had 5 books on there. Yeah, this is where I started to not give up, but really set my bar lower and lower. I did read The Lightning Thief by Percy Jackson. No, Rick Riordan. Pearl by Josh Malerman. That was a wild ride. The Woman in the Library by Sulari Gentile. What is Left are Coraline by Neil Gaiman, which this is gonna be a reread because it's one of my favorite books of all time. And I just wanted to keep this for when I'm really in the mood because I just really want to enjoy this. I don't want to force myself to read one of my favorite books and then subsequently not really enjoying it. And the last one is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, which I think I'm gonna exchange for Girl Forgotten by Karen Slaughter, just because the point of adding this book on the TBR was to finally try one of Karen Slaughter's books, and in the end it doesn't really matter to me which one it is. I found this available in the library the other day, so this is what I'm going with. Hopefully I'll get to it before I have to return it though. My winter TBR is really only 3 books long. On there I have The Lies of Loch Lamora from Scott Lynch, The Spirits Up by Todd Babiak, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This I'm super excited about because I heard so many good things about it, and it's gonna be a buddy read with Camila from Hasty Books, which by the way, I need to text her to check when we will start reading this, but I have high hopes for this one. Plus I think it's just gonna be fun to read it with someone, to have someone to discuss this with. Then from Nonfiction November, which is a reading challenge where you try to read at least one nonfiction book in the month of November, started by the wonderful A Book Olive. I had 6 books originally on my TBR, which you can watch here. And out of those 6 books, I read 5. And the 6th book I'm keeping for a later date with a good reason. The one book that I didn't get to yet is An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth by Chris Hadfield. I had looked at like the first 2-ish pages and I decided, you know what, I think this is gonna work so much better for me as an audiobook because that's how I usually like to consume my nonfiction. So I actually put in a request with my library to get this as an audiobook, which they will get it towards the end of the year, so soon-ish, or in the beginning of 2023. So as soon as I have the audiobook from my library on this one, I will get to it. So I still consider this challenge as a win. So the 5 books I did finish are Ask Me About My Uterus by Abby Norman, Beyond the Gender Binary by Alok Veit-Menon, Gathering Moss by Robin Won't Kimmerer, Julie and Julia by Julie Powell, Committed by Elizabeth Gilbert. This challenge really upped my nonfiction game because not only did I read 5 out of the 6 that I had on my TBR, but I actually read or listened to quite a few more that I didn't have on my initial reading plan. I cannot wait to participate again next year. And lastly, my overall book count goal of the year was to read 40 books, and I am right now at 88 books. I exceeded my goal by 220%, which is 48 books, which means for my next reading challenge, I haven't decided yet. So for 2023, I'm definitely gonna put the bar way higher. I don't know if I should put it at 100, maybe a bit below that, because I would be so disappointed if I didn't reach it, but at the same time, you do want to challenge yourself, right? So we'll see when we get there. Moving on to my 2023 planned reading challenges. The first one is about the language that I read my books in. So I have Storygraph, which you can follow me on there if you want to. Out of the 88 books that I have read so far, 84 of them are in English, and only four are in German, which is my mother tongue. It's my first language, and I read 4 out of 88 in that language. I'm so disappointed. I know that this is also a result of me not making any efforts. So for 2023, my goal is to read at least 15 books in German, preferably works that were originally written in that language, but translations are okay too. Additionally, I am challenging myself to read at least 1 book in French next year, because that is the newest language I've been picking up since I moved to Quebec, and I had to actually pass a very important language test, which I did, but I need to keep at it so I don't lose it. Most likely it's gonna be Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, because that is the book that I have reread the most out of anything else I've read in both German and English. So I'm very familiar with how the story goes. And I think this is going to help me to understand the story, but also pick up new vocabulary. I do hope that I can find it somewhere in a charity shop used, so I don't, have to buy it new. In terms of author ethnicity or nationality, I obviously do want to keep adding more BIPOC authors to my list, especially also Asian heritage authors. And most importantly for me personally next year is to read from more Filipino authors, and specifically also not just Filipino American authors that have been published in the US, but Filipino authors that have been published in the Philippines. I already have one book on my TBR that fits that prompt, which is Smaller and Smaller Circles from F.H. Batacan. Because of you guys who are commenting on my videos. I don't know who recommended this book from the top of my head, but I will make sure to leave your name in the comment section or in the description box. Thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. This is genre fiction. It is, I think, a thriller or a suspense novel that takes place in the Philippines. So very excited about this one. I hope I can get my hands on a copy. I'm gonna read it in English though. I think it was published in English. I don't think my language proficiency is well enough to actually read a book in Tagalog or in Kapampangan. My next challenge is related to all the books that I have here physically that I have not gotten to yet. I made a jar. In here, I put every single one on a post-it note. Whenever I have time or I'm, unsure what to pick up next, hopefully once a month or so, I'm just gonna pick a random book from this pile. And this does include my, books that are in my seasonal challenges or on my classics challenge. So there is a chance that I'm gonna pull Anna Karenina from this jar, and I have no other choice but to actually tackle it. So at this moment of filming, I have 54 unread books waiting on my bookshelves. If I ever draw one that I already read, I'm just gonna pick another title. Just a way for me to make sure that I move the books along as I acquire them. Next up, I am gonna keep the concept of my seasonal TBRs. This is a way for me to kind of look into what are my plans for the next 3 months. It's a great opportunity for me to put authors on that list that I've been meaning to get to for ages, but I still haven't, or just book titles that I wanted to read for so long. Obviously, I'm not abandoning the books that I haven't finished yet. I'm still gonna get to those, but I am also gonna put together a new list for upcoming spring. And just in general, just a few things that I want to keep in mind for next year are to read more from authors that I have previously enjoyed. For example, I noticed that I haven't picked up a new Ruth Ware book this year. I have one waiting for me on my bookshelves that I acquired recently from a charity shop. The Scythe series is one of my all-time favorite book series, and I haven't read anything new from Neil Shusterman since then. I want to read more short story collections because I thought I didn't like them until The Secret Lives of Church Ladies proved me wrong. Then I really want to find a new fantasy book series that just completely consumes me and that I love. It's been a while. I have started a few fantasy series this year, but I'm not particularly interested in continuing them, so you're probably going to see those titles in my most disappointing books of 2022, just because I was expecting so much more. And lastly, I have a prediction almost that maybe rom-com, romance-ish could be a genre that I enjoy so much more than I initially thought, because there's quite a few rom-com books that I gave a great rating. Books from authors like Beth O'Leary, Sophie Kinsella, Maggie Knox. I'm thinking of feel-good romance, but not too much romance. Things that make you feel warm and fuzzy inside, that kind of read like a Cameron Diaz rom-com. That's what I'm looking for. What I'm not looking for is books like this. Unfortunately, not for me. If this kind of stuff is your jam, then please go for it. Absolutely no offense, but not exactly what I mean. Please leave me your recommendations for rom-com, light romance books, for great fantasy series, for short story collections, and anything from, Ruth Ware, Neil Shusterman. What are your favorites? So much for my reading challenges in 2022 and 2023. Thank you so much for anybody who has commented on my videos and watched my videos this year. I know the year is not coming to an end yet, but thank you, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.